Hey, Tom, you ever wonder why on professional football and baseball games they have such great shots at specific times in the game? It's just amazing to me.
Those producers have the equipment and also know where everything's going to happen.
You know, if you take something like this building we have behind us, you know, indoor and outdoor coverage, they probably should do a site visit and a risk assessment. They got to come up with a budget.
Also, they need to look at, you know, we always say, you know, like in real estate, location, 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 but also what are you doing? Meaning, how much information do you need to get? What's your pixels on target? We always call it DORI. You know, if we're looking for detection, observation, recognition, identification, depending on what you're looking for, your fields of view are going to be dramatically different. So you need to look at that.
And those site visits and risk assessments will absolutely help with DORI.
Absolutely.
So Tom, let's go ahead and take an example of a real life scenario, right? Let's start with football, right? Football, they have the right lenses, the right cameras, locations are all right. It seems like it's all right in place.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, if you ever watch a game, you're going to look and, you know, they'll start out with a real wide field of view, but as they need that finite, you know, the defense, the offense, the line of scrimmage, even the quarterback sometimes, they'll zoom in. So again, depending on what the application is, you know, they have camera operators. Well, needless to say, in the security industry, you can have a wide field of view, but if I need to see more detail, that's typically where you use a pan, tilt, and zoom camera. But like in the football game, you need an operator. You need somebody to be able to control it. Hey, you can do tours also, but if I know exactly where the point is, where the action is on the football field, I need somebody to be able to get into there. Same way even at the goal line. I mean, goal lines now, they have the cameras built right into the pylon. I mean, you know, they have the cameras that are on the wires now above. They have it from every angle and every location. It's amazing.
Exactly. And a couple of things that you mentioned there, right? You have the cameras that go overview on the lines, right? That's very similar to what you can do in security world with drones. You have your guards who can go ahead and control it, and nowadays they even have these autonomous drones where you're not having a guard control that at all. It's taking a flight, it's going back to its spot, and then it goes back out. It's pretty cool stuff. And then you talk about the pylon. You can do the same thing in the building like this, right? We want to go ahead and take that camera. We want to put it right in the front entrance. That way, when you get a person walking through, you can go ahead and identify that person. Maybe recognize, but let's try to go for that identification. And the level that you put that camera, what the resolution is, the type of lens, right? All things that are really important that you want to take into consideration. And then last, that nice big overview on a parking lot, like similar to where we're in, right? In 50-yard line for football, they go ahead and have this huge this camera that has this great big picture of 50-yard line and the entire field. And you can see people, you can observe, right? You can detect. Really can't recognize or identify, but that's not what that purpose is for that camera, right? It's just to kind of see how everybody's doing and enjoying themselves. You can do the same thing in a parking lot. You can now put a camera on the top with a nice big wide view, and now you can see when people are coming onto your property, where they're parking. If there's an incident that happens, you can hopefully go back to those.
I always try to look at, you know, when I do a site survey with customers and that, you know, where are my choke points? If I can get a really good shot that identifying, you know, or 50 pixels on target, and again, depending on what you want, how do we get that crystal clear view at those locations? And then the rest of them, we can open up the field of view, because if I need to cover an area like this, I'll probably need 800 cameras. You know, feasibly, budget, it's not going to happen. But at that point, I got the choke point. I can identify, again, what clothes, who it is, what they're wearing, backpack colors, and things like that. Then as I can open up my field of views for the rest of my areas now, at least I can track that person of where they are. The hardest part is you have blind spots. You know, what do you do then? You know, now you got to wait for them to come back out into the field of view of another camera.
And the other thing is, like you were talking about wide views, right? Now we can look at resolution. And then after the fact, we can go back into the forensics video and now maybe drill into and see maybe that recognition level of video. So we look from a detection and or observation level, and now we can, after the fact with forensics, potentially get into that recognition. Identification, you're asking for a lot for there, but we can at least get a little bit better of a view. So let's talk about baseball, right? A little bit different than football. Football,
Yeah.
you can have cameras all over the place, but in baseball, you can't have cameras over the field,
Nope.
right? You can't have cameras on the field.
Nope.
It'd be in the field of play. That'd be a little bit of trouble there. So.
Absolutely. So with baseball, you're typically always having cameras either behind home plate or out in center field, but with big zoom lenses. So again, they can start out with a wide field of view, but also they want to be able to catch the pitcher's expression or maybe even his grip. That, from that distance, you need big zoom lens to be able to do that. Now we've seen that from center field, the strikes, balls and strikes now, you're able to call them yourself even now at this point, instead of having the umpire, because of the detail, the resolution that camera that's 400 or 500 feet away is able to capture. But again, you need that lens, you need that resolution, you need that operator to be able to control that for that nice tight field of view. Unless you have a choke point, like at an entrance or exit of a building. Again, it all comes down to what are you looking to accomplish? How much detail do you need, Eric?
Right. Good points. And one of the things about choke points for baseball is you get that picture from behind the plate, right? Whether it's actually in the wall and behind the plate, or even sometimes maybe even on an umpire, right? Looking right into it and seeing that ball come in and seeing exactly where the spin on the ball. I mean, it's amazing what they can do with those things, right?
Yeah. And
so then just to kind of come back to a place like a building, we want to make sure that we put those cameras in the right locations, resolutions, and field of views that are going to make the best for it.
At the end of the day, I know everybody likes a data sheet and that, but how do you typically design that, or how do you show the customer that field of view?
So there's software out there that you can look in and import in. There's things called Revit models, which is 3D modeling, right? And now manufacturers come out and each manufacturer has their own kind of calculations of field of views. And a lot of times those are 3D and you can break them out and see. And I've even seen where it's gone further where you can import your actual Revit model and or your CAD drawings and show them what you'll see. I mean, it's amazing. The other thing that's really cool that's just come out that I've seen is you can actually now put on the 3D goggles in reality.
Virtual reality.
And you're actually in the scene of the actual room. And we can now say, okay, this is what you're looking at. And you can see what kind of furniture's in there, which I'm sure you've come across this.
Oh, sure.
Furniture, all of a sudden you have this cabinet up there and it totally blocked. You're like, this is the perfect spot. And then they put this 8-foot tall cabinet up there right in front of where you were looking at. So this virtual reality software allows you to go in there and kind of manipulate it and maybe shift that camera location maybe 2 or 3 feet over that you would have been like, why am I going to put that camera over there, right? That doesn't make sense to me. I always want to put it in the corner. I want to kind of hide it. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I can't do that because I'm not going to get my field of view that you want.
No. And again, we've hit the field of views, the resolutions, the locations, DORI, pixels on target. But one of the big things at a football game, baseball game, or any of these sporting events, what's the one thing that's always a constant too? The lighting. There's always really good lighting. What's the lighting like out here at night in the parking lot?
Of course. Great point. You look at this area, you've got a pretty wide space, not so deep. Do you have a recommendation, or what would you put up in something like this?
I mean, always when I go outside, just because we never know unless, again, you're coming out here at night and seeing what the lighting levels are like, I typically would use, a 5 megapixel IR rated camera, just because I'm going to get good detail with IR if it needs to be there, because maybe some lights are burned out, or where you have trees that overgrew the light, maybe the lighting's not the best. So the IR now is going to take care of that if we need additional lighting in certain areas. But again, pan, tilt, and zoom in this environment, I think would be a little bit of an overkill. Number one, they probably don't have a command center where somebody's operating it. Doing a tours are, again, okay, but while it's looking over there, it's missing all this information. The multi-imagers, the panoramic cameras are great environments like this because you're getting a bigger geographic area. Now, we went back to choke points. If we got a choke point down there, then maybe we can get a lot of information on the vehicles that come in. maybe even an LPR camera, where again, you're getting that license plate information, and as they come around, I can see where that vehicle is, where it went, and as it goes back out, if it did something, now we have the information on that vehicle.
Yeah, all great points. And one of the other things I'd like to equate this to, right? So you have a parking lot that has a lot of space. If you think about like a cafeteria, something in a hospital environment, college, things. One of the things that's obviously different. One, the space is about the same, but the difference here is we can mount our stuff a lot higher, right?
Yep.
And so when you're in a cafeteria in that hospital environment, you can't mount it as high, and so then we've got to potentially add more, right?
Correct.
More cameras to the to the area just so we can get full coverage, because that definitely the mounting types, height. The type, whether you're carrying it over with a parapet or whether you're wall mounting it, corner mount, whatever it may be, are all things that come in consideration. And then back to the choke points. You got a choke point out here in your entrance or your parking lot.
Right.
It's the same concept if you think about it in a cafeteria, right? People have to walk into your cafeteria. So we may have multiple cameras in like a cafeteria space where we're covering all our observation, right? But then we have that opportunity when they come in to go ahead and get some recognition and potentially identification type level video.
Absolutely. I mean, even it goes into where, again, we always ask customers, where are your problem areas, and stuff like that. And believe it or not, like schools, when they have a football game, a baseball game, a wrestling match, a basketball game, where the fans are, what's the best way to cover those areas, and how do we cover those areas?
And in football stadiums and baseball stadiums, right? They're huge, and you get this great picture. I'm sure you've seen it in a football game where you have this one camera and it sees everything. And we're enormous stadium, right? And it sees everything. Well, that's great to get that observations, but then placing those cameras, choke points in a stadium, in my opinion. Stairwells, right? Your entries into from the concourse into the actual stadium. Lots of little places that we can go ahead and put cameras. But how do you get to that point, right? One of the things that thing you have to do, right? Site surveys and risk assessments. Why am I doing this? And then if I do want to do this because I need to mitigate against it, then where do I place them?
Exactly.
Right?
And again, we would never try to design a system over the phone without going and doing a site survey, because like you said, what type of mounts do you need? What's the lighting like? Where's the choke point? How can I get my best vantage point, at that point? And then ultimately, we always got to work on a budget too, because that certain camera that maybe only, multi-megapixel camera sounds good, but again, what's the lighting like? But also the storage requirements now as you start pumping that resolution up. So you got to look at everything for the customer, their needs, but also their budget, their infrastructure. In the ITS market, intelligent transportation, they use pan, tilt, and zooms. And everybody goes, why do they always use pan, tilt, and zooms? They're more expensive than a fixed camera, because their infrastructure costs could be $500,000 for that one pole.
Right.
The one camera could be $600,000 or $6,000. Really isn't a big deal then at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I say all the time is we need to take the holistic approach, right? You can't just keep yourself tunneled into something that I want PTZs, I want 4K cameras. You've got a budget. Then you've got to look at the threats, and then you got to look at the site and specific information about it, where we put these things.
And ultimately, no matter what you do too, is how can we keep the system so it can either expand, be it camera counts, licenses, storage, because nobody ever takes cameras away. It's typically they're adding cameras. Even though the resolution's getting better, from the old analog days, I probably needed 8 cameras back here to cover this. I could probably do it with 2 cameras today because of the resolution and the quality of the cameras. It's the same way with the football field and baseball field. The cameras that they're utilizing, they're just amazing technology that's out there.
Yeah, and it's always improving, always improving. So one of the things Theseus does, and I know you guys do some stuff too, we do risk assessments. And so, we look at the threat and why. Why do we need to do this, right? And so, it's very important for any kind of project that you're going to do for security is that you always make sure that you're applying for a reason, right? Apply your security for a specific reason. So a lot of times we take that information from a threat, risk and threat assessment. We look at, okay, where are your vulnerabilities? What's your neighbor do?
Right.
You know, where are you at located centrally from a city standpoint? Are you urban, or you know, and then also what does your company do? You know, that's something that some people don't think about. If, you know, you have something that you do specific that's, you know, kind of more in the limelight of the media and different things like that, you could become more of a target.
Absolutely.
Versus somebody maybe in this building over here who we don't even know they're here. Right? And so there's things that you want to look at. And so maybe here we wouldn't do as much security versus somebody who's on, you know, maybe a major road.
Absolutely.
And things like that. So risk assessments are very important. And Theseus does that on a regular basis. And I know you guys do site surveys.
Correct.
What would you say a site survey looks like?
I mean, a site survey is always a critical part because, again, you know, customers typically are always saying, well, you know, what is the equipment that I need?
One of the things I love to do is to have an actual camera come out and in the environment show the customer what they're going to get. You guys do something like that?
Absolutely. Data sheets are great, but at the same time, what does that do? What's that give me? Okay, it tells you your resolution, tells you this, tells you that. But when you actually see the performance and will it fix your problems or solve your problems, that's the goal. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, what is your problem? And here's something that's going to solve your problem. And again, could be resolution, could be lighting, could be whatever at that point. Let's make sure we get the right piece of equipment to be able to solve that problem. I mean, so many times the customer doesn't really realize, you know, because again, we all hear about resolution, but what do I need? Sometimes they think they need, you know, 12, 20, 30 megapixel, you know, and then when they look at it, they go, oh, that 2, 4, 6 megapixels is more than adequate.
Agreed. The other thing is I think is huge is getting it in the environment, right?
Yes.
And giving it an opportunity to record, see what you're going to get. Because it all can change. It can change on season. It could change by foliage of your trees and your brush and stuff of that nature. So I think that getting demos and getting these cameras out there into the environment and showing what they get. Worst thing that happens is when you tell a customer, hey, this camera can do this. It has a line that you cross and it's going to record. It's going to do all these great, beautiful things because that's what the data sheet tells you.
Right.
And then you go and put it out there. They spent all this money on it and they don't get what they want.
No.
They don't get their expectation is here, and unfortunately the camera comes in here.
Exactly. So anybody that's involved with that, from the integrator, the consultant, the manufacturer, is going to get a black eye. We want to make sure nobody gets a black eye. The customer gets exactly what they want right up front. You know, when people come to you and they say, hey, I don't even know what this is going to cost. Can you help me at least? You know, again, doing a risk assessment, doing a site survey at least, being able to put together a bill of material, you know, helps and aids them getting funding. And maybe they got to go to different agencies or different departments in their facility to get the funding.